Hi, this is Joe Jenks, and I'm delighted to be here hosting for the Daily Antidote of Song today. What a phenomenal thing this is, going since the very beginning of the pandemic. We've got to be into 11:30s at this point. I think we were at 11:24 last week when I was joyed to sing with you. So our guest today is Hubby Jenkins, an extraordinary musician. We'll get back to him, but I just wanted to give him a shout out straight away. And so nice to see all of you. Jojo, thanks for being here. Tacoma Park, Jaden, thank you for all of your work on the technical end of this. Hubby, thanks for joining us. Kevin and DC, Dorian Oli, Mabel, Deli, Trish, Victoria, excellent. Pauline and Dad in Newcastle, UK, fantastic. Susan G, Cincinnati, love Cincinnati. Home of the Flying Pig, Hoda in BC, Shazi in Bethesda, Leah, Arlene in Berkeley, Laris in Texas, Sheila in Florida, Bonnie in Boise, fantastic. Kate in Charlottesville, Storm, always great to see you. Day 11:30, thank you for that, Carolyn in Boise. Clive, thanks for being with us. Yeah, I'm getting so many pop-ups here, I can't keep up with it. Annette and Sarah and Kathleen in Albuquerque, fantastic. Ruth, Birmingham, UK, wow, thanks for joining us. Good afternoon to you. Almost good evening soon, I suppose. Aloysius, great to have you here. Susan in Seattle, Jamie in Virginia. You're starting to get the picture. We're coming in from all over the place. Anna in Nashville, Sandy, Bob, Fred. Great to see you, Mabel. I think you, oh yeah, and the Bears, fantastic. Yes, Bear Mom. Yep. Gary, great to see you. Trish, Karen, Moon, excellent. Bronwyn, Linnea, Nancy. Yep, screens are bouncing around now. I apologize. I'm having a hard time keeping up with all the new ones. But we've got Jenny in Suffolk, UK. Fantastic. Gwen and Dawn and Carol J. And yeah, so you're starting to get the picture. We have a whole lot of people from all around North America and other parts of the world. Welcome to Carpe Diem Arts and the Daily Antidote of Song. We're so glad to have you with us today. Our guest song leader is Hubby Jenkins, who is really an extraordinary musician, phenomenally gifted in many areas. And he has a new EP out, The Fourth Day, and you might want to go to his website and check that out. Got some new music fresh coming from him. Hubby started out busking in New York City and playing music for people in one of the most difficult kinds of settings for an artist that aspires to a listening environment. But it's a phenomenal thing if you've ever done busking, because it requires you to just up your game and up your game to the point that you can't be ignored, that you command people's attention. And every time I've seen you at a festival, that is exactly what you do. You command people's attention in such a gentle and powerful way through your music. And you invite people into the music, which is, of course, part of why you're here with us today, to invite us into the music. Welcome, Hubby Jenkins.
Oh man, you know how to make someone feel really good about it. Yeah, thank you so much. And it's good to be here. I also found busking was a good way to practice because the train comes every 5 minutes, so I could play the same three songs over and over again until I got them right. So that was the other part of that.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Hubby was also part of the Carolina Chocolate Drops for 7 years. He's played in Rhiannon Giddens' band, in addition to having a phenomenal solo career. So just to put a few bona fides out there, and Hubby really is just an extraordinary treasure in the folk circuit in the U.S. and North America and beyond. And we're so delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Hi everybody. Good to see you. Hope you're living well. I'm coming to you caffeinated from my house in Queens, one day away from being in Juneau, Alaska, which is exciting. And I was asked to bring in a lullaby, and I brought in a lullaby that maybe a lot of people might know. It's called All the Pretty Little Horses, or sometimes called Hushabye, and sometimes called Heap of Horses. And Maybe I'll be brave and not do it with a guitar. Maybe I'll try and do an a cappella. But our chorus goes something like this. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses. And our chorus encompasses that part and also the blacks and bays. And then we have 2 verses that are in there. And then we'll talk about it. Are you ready? Don't fall asleep now. Here we go. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, doppels and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. Way down yonder in the meadow, there's a poor little baby. The bees and the butterflies pecking out its eyes, and the poor little thing cried, Mammy. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. Little old horse, little old cow, rambling around the old hay mow. Little old horse, he took a chew. Darned if I don't, said the old cow too. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. Great job, everybody.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful lullaby. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of that song?
Yeah, from what I know, from my handy-dandy American Ballads and Folk Songs by Alan Lomax, if you turn to page 304 of your copies, Dorothy Scarborough, in her book On the Trail of Negro Folk Songs from 1925, I think, says that this is one of the lullabies that the, quote, Negro mammy sang to their little white charges. And in later versions in that verse, it says, waiting yonder in the meadow, there's a poor little baby. In the version that's in this book, it says little lammy, and it keeps like the animal thing going. And so the idea is that these were enslaved women who were taking care of their master's kids while their children were out in the field and enduring these sorts of things. So it kind of gives it this bitter sweetness, like, don't worry, you little baby. You'll have all these horses in a carriage, and out here in the meadow, this thing is happening. And the last verse comes from Texas Gladden, her version of it, which he called Heap of Horses, which has this kind of more joking verse about, you know, one animal who has, one animal who doesn't, and the one who doesn't saying, like, what the heck, if I don't do this too, you know, I'll be without. So I think it has that power within it that's, you know, the undercurrent of these most African-American folk songs.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So tell us a little bit about this new EP that you've released.
Well, it's new old. It's my newest. But people here and people who have seen me, whatever, know I have a very strong obsession with spirituals and gospel music. And I'm actually right now in the midst of recording a full spiritual album. So that will be really cool. But yeah, you know, I play old time music and talk about black people. So kind of incorporating the ideas of, you know, spirituals and gospels being the roots of a lot of our country's music. But also being able to tell the story of like black Christianity and, you know, how Africans knew about Christianity and some were Christian back in Africa, but it becomes a totally different animal here when it has to go up against the institution of slavery and racism, et cetera, in this country. And so the birth of Christianity here coincides with the birth of black Christianity coincides with the birth of slavery in a lot of ways. The first people who were enslaved in Virginia, they were like, we don't want them to be Christian. So you find the first big wave of Christianity amongst black folks here to be protected against this new slavery that starts to come up. So right there directly creates two different Christianities, one that facilitates this thing and one that has to deal with it.
Yeah, to deal with the juxtaposition and the contradictions inherent in all of that.
I mean, imagine if you're like, we're going to start slavery, but we don't want anyone that we enslave to be Christian because then we have to deal with the spiritual, mental, and emotional ramifications of enslaving people that can get into the exact same heaven as us. That would be a very awkward day.
Yeah, indeed. There was a minister up in New Amsterdam back before New York City was a thing. That was a Dutch Reform minister who was baptizing black folks up there and administering sacraments to all people without discrimination. And it was a pretty controversial thing. He was called back to Holland to be accountable for his actions, and made a pretty strong case, and is viewed by many people in the light of liberation. I'm not sure that it would stand up to our current standards, but in the context of what you're saying, it seems like it would a little bit. That a minister who was in the 1640s, 1650s ministering sacraments to all people without discrimination.
It would vary. It would definitely vary. There were people. It would vary because then you have people like Francis Lejeune who went around baptizing enslaved people and saying, like, I want to baptize them so that they get into heaven or whatever his philosophy was. But he gave them a different baptismal vow that made them promise that they weren't doing it to be free. They weren't doing it to say that they were equal to whites and all these other things. So it becomes like, it's not a real baptism. This becomes its own thing. And he was kind of, others were seen as heroes for like, yeah, we'll Christianize the Africans and have them be workers because the Native Americans are all dying from the work. So I'm really humanitarian by shifting the conversation over. There's lots of things. It's not black and white.
For sure, it's not.
Don't even get me started. Don't get me started.
Oh, no, man, I'd love to have this conversation off screen sometime. This is brilliant. Because there's also a piece of it that's religious colonialism and the imposition of one people's belief system on another. And that gets crazy complex. But you are working on this album of spirituals. I want to mention that we are celebrating mothers this week, and we'll come back to that because we'll cycle back to this lullaby and a couple stories about your family life in honor of that. But I'm wondering if there's one of these spirituals or part of one of these spirituals that you'd like to share with us today.
I mean, I guess some of the stuff that'll be on there is like some things that I've sang here before. How About You is one song that we've done here before, which comes from Thomas A. Dorsey, the godfather or the founder of gospel music.
Chicago guy here. I'm all about him. He's great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll do 2 seconds of it if we've got time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do the second verse because it's my favorite. When shadows overtake me and troubles start to brew, and I have done the best that I can do, my good friends will talk about me, and sometimes my kinfolks too. But I take it all to Jesus. How about you? 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 I hope my Savior is your Savior too. Your Savior too. I said, Lord, take and use me, 'cause that's all I can do. And I gave my heart to Jesus. How about you?
Oh, that's great. Beautiful. You mind singing that chorus one more time so people can jump in?
How about you? How about you? Well, I hope my Savior is your Savior too. Your Savior too. I said, Lord, take and use me, 'cause that's all I can do. And I gave my heart to Jesus. How about you?
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I love the stories of Thomas A. Dorsey and pushing around a piano trying to sell sheet music on the streets of Chicago. Yeah, just
I've been
cool
trying to work
stuff.
on like learning more of his dirty songs too, so I can really mix up the set.
Yeah,
When he was hanging out with like Tampa Red and he was
yeah,
Georgia Tom.
yeah. He kind of had really two very different careers. And
Not
we,
uncommon, you know. I remember like I did like a family research thing ages ago. I didn't really know my grandparents super well, and I was down. My family's from Reidsville, North Carolina, and I was down there interviewing my great aunt, who was like the matriarch of that side of the family. And I learned that my grandfather was a blues piano player, and that like a lot of people in that side of my family were all known as like blues piano players. But by the time I came around, they were all like super Christians, and they didn't play any blues
Mhm.
music anymore. And like when he moved up to New York, he just only played gospel music. So it's not an uncommon thing for people to be like, you know, oh, the blues, that was when I was young and living wild or whatever.
Yeah, I had a mohawk when I was young. There's proof out there.
You get it.
That's great. So, celebrating mothers, you mentioned something interesting right before we went live that you grew up with two moms. Tell us a little bit about that and how that affected who you are in the world.
Oh, I guess, yeah, I grew up with two moms, Cassandra and Paula. And Cassandra is my Reidsville, North Carolina connection, and Paula was from Puerto Rico, so it's my Puerto Rican connection. And I guess, like, I mean, it taught me a lot of things. I grew up with lots of different types of music. Both of my parents listened to lots of different types of music. Um, and so I learned to just like appreciate that, listen to music critically, all that kind of stuff. We always did an album at dinner. That was our thing. So someone got to pick an album and we just listened to it while we ate. Um, and then, you know, both my parents were raised Catholic and changed their minds about it. So, and we experimented with lots of different religions when I was growing up. So we did whatever. Like I prayed at a mosque. We did Buddhism. We did pagan stuff for a while. We just tried everything. So just being open minded and all that kind of stuff. All my babysitters were either like very buff 80s bodybuilding gay men and drag queens and trans people. And so I just grew up very open and not realizing that it was not normal, quote unquote. Um, so yeah, let's throw up a picture. Let's throw up a picture of me and both of my parents together back in the 80s. This is at my grandma's house uh, in a waterside complex where she's lived since I can remember, and it's right on the East River where they do the Fourth of July fireworks. So this is us there at the fire. I'm the one in the middle, in case you're wondering, and that's Cassandra with the orange shirt, and that's Paula with the blue shirt. And yeah, and so that's my folks. One story that my family likes to tell a lot is apparently when I was around 2 or younger, I must have been younger than 2 maybe, but Paula would sing me songs to put me to sleep. And she was a big Eagles fan. And she was singing an Eagles song to me in my crib. And apparently I stood up in the crib and put my hand on her mouth and said, no, no more. So no offense to Eagles fans out there, but I haven't been an Eagles fan since 1986, apparently. Um, let's see. Give us another random picture. I forget which ones I sent. Yeah, and so you can see the guitar and the conga drums. So like when we had our cookouts and our barbecues, like family would come and play congas and cowbells and all that kind of stuff. So like, you know, at some point the radio went off and we made our own music. And that's just something I grew up with a whole lot, is like making music and shouting. And still to this day, when we have cookouts, now I play timbale. They got me on timbales now. Um, Also, I love those jeans to death when I was a kid, and I am wearing a Ghostbusters belt, which was what the first thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a Ghostbuster, but didn't work out.
Wow. Well, I'm going to guess that you've cast out a few demons with your music.
This is me. This is last summer in Puerto Rico with my two cousins. The one in the middle is in the army and she got off. That's my mom, Paula, there. That's my other cousin who's named after her, Paulita. And we were in a place, it's called like Broken Bridge. It's on the northwest side of the island, like by Ponce. And they have a giant bridge there where people jump off and it's very scary. And I did it and was very proud. And so, yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm Puerto Rican, I guess. I don't know how to throw that in there, but that's a big part of my heritage too, is like having that importance. And the other thing I guess to talk about too is like, Paula's not like my biological mother. And so, there was recently Marjorie Taylor Greene had her fucking nonsense where she was telling this woman that she wasn't a real mother because she hadn't given birth to her stepdaughter, or however they call each other, and like had, I don't know, the bravery or the audacity to say something like this to a person on national television, like, you're not a real mother. And just grossly disgusting and offensive. Like, this is my real mother as much as anything. And always the family you make and the people who love you, that's your family, period. As
Amen.
far as I'm concerned.
Amen. Wow.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard that. That's crazy disturbing.
Yeah, this was maybe a week or two ago. They were talking about I think she's head of the teachers union, or she's head of some sort of teacher thing, and they were talking about teaching social distance teaching, whatever it's called, teaching them. And she was like, oh, you did this so the teachers could get a break. And it's like, no, for the spread of COVID, and she's like, you're not a real mother. You don't know what the children are going through. And that kind of, it's gross. Let's not give her any more airtime.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But if you want, how is being Puerto Rican, in addition to other identities that are a part of the great mix of who you are, how has that affected your music?
Oh, how's it affected my music? I mean, I guess like just talking about those cookouts, that's a big thing. And also like once my mom is like an independentista, so she's for like the independence of Puerto Rico. Grew up learning about Taino Indians, who are the native people of Puerto Rico, and learning about, slaves going through the Caribbean. Like all of these things kind of were in my brain when I started to play old time music and started to ask questions about like, wait, so black people did what to that, contributed this, and
right.
How the banjo comes from where, and all of that like becomes the roots of that for me. So it kind of I don't know, inspires my song choices, how I talk about them, and I guess the political or social stance that I take with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I did a stint with the U.S. State Department where I was it was a cultural ambassador tour through the Caribbean, and the last stop for me was in Puerto Rico, and I had a fair amount of free time. I was only there one day, but I sought out people to have conversations about the independence movement specifically and learn more about that, and it was absolutely fascinating.
It's like the history there is fascinating, and like a lot of people don't know, like a lot of the history also happens here in the States, like independentistas like stormed Congress, and like terrorist attacks, and all kinds of things have happened around this, as well as like more peaceful things. But it's like it's been a fight since the beginning, basically.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for sharing your stories with us about how your time in Puerto Rico and your connection there has impacted you. Thanks for this beautiful music. Would you mind spinning us down with another piece of Joe Rossi is waving her hands frantically up here, and I don't know what she's trying to say.
Jump in and interrupt because we have one more hubby picture.
That's right.
Can we share that?
Yeah, sure. I forgot. That's me meeting Wynton Marsalis last week. And people might not know, but like I actually grew up playing the alto saxophone from the age of 5 until about 15, 16. I played sax, and my parents, especially Cassandra, had this dream of me being a jazz musician. So we listened to like Bramford and Wynton Marsalis a lot in my house. But I feel like the 90s was a big heyday for them. And so I just grew up like listening to them. We had like VHS tapes of them performing and stuff like that. And so this was for a podcast called Person, Place, Thing. where the host interviews people and asks them for an influential person, influential place, influential thing, and musicians play music in between each question. And I got to do this and play there, and he listened to the old time music and like heard it, like whipping out the banshees, like, oh yeah, okay, I hear that. Like you were doing that with the New Orleans beat, and like talking about it, and it was awesome. It was very cool. So, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. So I guess I don't know if we're running out of time or whatever, but long story short of it, family you make. This is my mom's best friend. This is my mom Cassandra and my mom's best friend Michelle, who I have grown up with as my aunt my whole life. Like that is my aunt. Her children are my cousins. Her mom is my granny. And they used to go to a lot of Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't know if people know what that is, but Google that. And there's a place called the Playhouse in the Lower East Side in New York, where they did it every weekend, and they would have people performing it live in front of the stage while it's happening on screen, which is part of the tradition. And there are all these call outs and things that happen along with it. So my mom is dressed up as her character, Columbia, the tap dancer in the movie. And my aunt is dressed up as the Cowardly Lion, which is not related to that at all. But this was their Halloween costume one year. And I found this picture, and I just love it so much.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, we'll stay tuned here this week for more songs, lullabies, songs about moms. But for now, Hubby, if you'd be willing to, if you'd revisit that lullaby that you started us out with and let us sing a little bit more of that, just to get it in people's heads and get them singing again.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, thanks for chatting. Loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we have time. We'll do one verse. We won't do both verses. Here we go. I can sing hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, you little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. Way down yonder in the meadow, there's a poor little baby. The bees and the butterflies pecking out its eyes, and the poor little thing cried, Mammy. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, you little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, you little baby. Should we just do the last verse anyway, because it feels so good? You talked me into it.
Absolutely.
Little old horse, little old cow, rambling round the old hay mow. Little old horse, he took a chew. Darned if I don't, said the old cow too. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little babe. Great job, everybody.
Wow.
Thank you so much. I love you all very much. Be well.
Thanks so much for joining us, Hubby. And we'll be sure and send people to your website to check out all the things that you're up to these days. And thanks for being with us on Daily Antidote, a Song.
No problem.
And thanks to all of you for being with us. You can go to the Carpe Diem Arts website or just Google Daily Antidote of Song, and it will bring up all kinds of information. Many people join us through Facebook. Thanks so much for being with us today on Facebook as well. And these episodes are archived, so if you've missed one that you want to go back and see, there's often an opportunity to do that. Not always, but most of the time. And there are links on the Daily Antidote Song website where you can look at all of that information. Again, a huge thanks to Hubby Jenkins. Give it up for him for sharing this amazing music and these beautiful stories with us and some great photographs. Brave man sharing those photographs. That's fantastic. Thanks to everybody joining us out there in the etherverse, in the universe, from all kinds of different places. Aloysius, thanks for being here. Harriet and Amanda and Miles and Ralph and Caroline and DC Moon and LMG Curly Tops. Yeah. Gaia, thanks for being Maui. Fantastic. Wow. Wish I could trade places with you for a minute. Carol J and Connecticut Storm, Trish, Nancy, Sarah. Thanks so much for being with us. Gary and Clive and Bob, Massachusetts. Fred, thanks for being with us from Silver Spring. Ann in Nashville, Kevin and Hindi and Linda, Orcas Island. I love Orcas Island. Oh man, I'd trade places with you too. Susan in Seattle. And thanks for being here with us. Deborah in Kentucky and Nancy and yeah, and Sandy and Jamie in Virginia, Martha, Ruth, Birmingham, UK. Thanks for being with us, representing from across the pond. Kathleen, Albuquerque represents. Annette down in California. Carolyn in Boise, love Boise. Bonnie in Boise as well. I assume you two know each other and get together for coffee every once in a while. All right, fantastic. Kate in Charlottesville. I'm going to be in Charlottesville next year doing a concert. I'll keep you posted on that. Sheila in Florida. I'll be down there next year. Laris, I'll be in Texas this year. Going to the Kerrville Festival. Hoda in BC. BC is a big place, and I love all of it that I've seen. Susan in Cincinnati, Go Flying Pigs, Pauline and Dad in Newcastle, Delhi. Thanks for being with us. Dorian, Ollie, Kevin in DC, thanks for being here. Hubby, thanks so much for being with us today. Joe Rossi has been wrangling this thing from the very beginning. 1,130 days today. This is amazing. Jaden has been doing a phenomenal job helping us make sense of all of this. And once more, before we go off the air, please show your appreciation for Hubby Jenkins and look up his music. Support independent artists, support the people that are keeping culture in all of its many beautiful facets alive and well and in our consciousness.